Welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum for Bethel Park School Board. My name is Eileen Olmsted, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Greater Pittsburgh. I live in the city of Pittsburgh, not Bethel Park, and I'll be the moderator for this event. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes any candidate or any political party. Rather, we are dedicated to facilitating the informed and active participation of citizens in government. The Bethel Park School Board consists of 9 individuals who are elected at large by the citizens of Bethel Park. School board members are both state and local officials. Though elected locally, they serve on behalf of the Pennsylvania State Legislature. Each director serves without compensation for a term of 4 years. The Board of Directors' primary responsibilities include provide for the education of all children, set district policies and regulations regarding school activities, adopt textbooks, hire a superintendent, principals, teachers, and other staff, adopt an annual school budget, and levy taxes. Now a few specifics regarding the format of today's forum. We're going to go up to have about 60 minutes to ask questions, and each candidate will give a closing statement. Straws were drawn earlier by the League of Women Voters Committee to determine the order in which the candidates will speak. Each candidate will have a chance to answer each question, with each person having 1.5 minutes to respond. There will be no time given for rebuttals. If a candidate wishes to respond to another candidate's statements, he or she will need to use time from the answer to the next question. I will be asking the questions in a rotation manner so that each candidate will have an equal chance to be the first to answer questions. Questions have been gathered from a variety of sources from the public and the League of Women Voters members, and have been reviewed for relevance to the position being sought, and also for duplication, clarity, and civility. Candidate answers will be timed, and candidates will be advised when their time has expired, although a sentence may be completed. Please remember that these candidates are your friends and neighbors who have stepped forward to serve their community. It is my honor to introduce the candidates in the order that they'll be speaking. So first, to answer the first question will be Sean Brown. Second, Sharon Janasik. Third, Buffy Feist, and fourth, Dan Grisbeck. The League of Women Voters has made every effort to enlist the participation of all the candidates in this race. However, 3 of the candidates have declined to participate. So the first question will go to Sean Brown. What educational expertise, professional and personal knowledge, and skills and experiences will you bring to the school board?
Well, hey, good morning, and thank you for arranging this service so that the members of the community get a chance to hear what the school board members have to say. As far as what I bring, I didn't get into teaching until my mid-30s. Before that, I worked as a systems integrator for power plants and mining operations, a lot of STEM-related fields. So I have a diverse background with industry. I've taught high school physics, math, computer science for the last 7 years. So I think I have a good idea of the skills that kids need moving forward to be successful in life. Taking all the STEM related experience, I incorporate that in my electronics class, in my physics class, in my computer science class, and I feel like I'm able to give the kids a wider breadth of knowledge of what they can expect moving forward. So as far as how that translates to the school board, setting policies in place to give these kids the real world skills that are going to benefit them, and guiding the district and its resources that way. I think I have a good skill set to get that done.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Janasik, could you answer that question?
Sure. Hi, and thank you so much for hosting us today. We appreciate it. I'm Sharon Janasik. I've been working as a volunteer advocate in our community since 2015. And I've done so much work talking both with families and community members about what's happening for specific children and helping those families work with the school system to get those needs met, as well as systemically advocating at school board meetings, making public comments, having conversations with board members, administrators, teachers, staff. I receive so much information from people in the community and what their experiences are in school. I've also graduated from the Temple University Institute on Disabilities, Competence and Confidence, Partners in Policy Making, which is an advocacy intensive certificate. Also the Peel Family Leadership Institute. And I take so many courses. I sit on these statewide special education advisory panel, and I receive information directly from Patton, from PDE, from BSE, and do a lot of courses and trainings about how to work with school systems and how schools work. So I'm excited to bring that forward and use that in my board experience.
Thank you. Ms. Fies, what educational expertise, professional and personal knowledge and skills and experiences will you bring to the school board?
I have a master's in special education and a bachelor's in elementary education. I've been teaching for about a decade, but prior to that, I did work as a salesperson. And prior to that, I was actually a bartender. So I feel like when you look at different walks of life, I have a whole bunch of them. So that said, I have, and well, first of all, being in the schools and seeing what's actually happening, I have a bird's eye view of what's going on, and certainly can relate to kids and their struggles and their successes right now, where we are as a country. But aside from that, I feel like I can reach kids that have different interests. So not everyone is going to college, and not everyone comes from, a very stable home. And there are so many different factors we have to take into what's going on with the kiddos, that I feel like living my life the way I did, I have a pretty good perspective. So I do have the education to back it, and the careers, both prior and current. But I just feel like I have a pretty good grasp on kids.
Thank you. Mr. Grisbeck, what educational expertise, professional and personal knowledge and skills and experiences will you bring to the school board?
First and foremost, I'd like to thank you all at League of Women Voters for holding this forum, as well as my fellow candidates for agreeing to participate and answer the questions that our community cares about. My full-time position is as an engineer at the Naval Nuclear Laboratory Bettis site, so I'm able to bring a lot of experience and knowledge as it pertains to data, studies, just scientific concepts in general, to make sure that we're making the most evidence-based decisions for our schools. It also allows me to, kind of like Sean said, give a bit of perspective for possible STEM curriculum. I also served as a substitute teacher this past year during the pandemic. I got my emergency substitute teacher certification and taught math at IMS, NAMS, and the high school. While I certainly wouldn't consider myself an educator and definitely don't have the level of educational knowledge that Mr. Brown and Ms. Feist do, I think that was a really valuable experience that allowed me to see what the students at Bethel Park are dealing with. As you can see, I'm also a bit younger than your typical school board candidate. So I think I bring a different perspective because I was a high school student so recently, and I really know what students today have to deal with.
Well, thank you. The second question will go first to Ms. Janasic. If you have children, what schools do your child or children attend and why?
Oh, I do have children. I have two children. They both attend IMS, 7th and 8th grade. And why do they go to IMS? They go to, well, it's the building in our district, but they're in public school because I believe in public schools. I believe in our community supporting every child and every family who lives here. I believe in education being the key to the success of the entire community. And something that comes up sometimes, I think a lot of times people say, well, I don't have kids in school anymore. So it doesn't really matter what goes on over there. And I always remind them, it does though, because the kids who graduate from our district, those are the kids who you will need in a few years to come and help you in your home and take care of you. Those are the workers who are going to be at your bank, at your restaurant. They're going to be the people who are running companies. They're going to be your doctors and your nurses, your financial planners, your bankers. Our students, if they leave our school system without the skills and abilities that they need to function in society and move us forward, it's going to affect all of us. We need our youth. They're the leaders of the future.
Thank you. Ms. Feist, if you have children, do your child or children attend schools where?
So my kids are old. They're long out of school, but strangely enough, I have twins that are going to be 30 and a 25-year-old, and they all started in a Catholic school. And we did not live I've lived in Bethel since forever, but for maybe 2 years, we lived outside of Bethel. And when we lived outside of Bethel, they went to a Catholic school, and they still, at the age of 30, won't let me forget it because it was very sheltered environment. And I'm not kidding when I say that. They're still like, well, it's your fault because you sent us to a Catholic school. And there's nothing wrong with Catholic schools, but I'm just saying it is sheltered, and I don't believe you have the diversity that you have in a public school. So that said, after they started in Catholic schools, and then they did go into Bethel Park. My youngest was in 3rd grade when he went to Bethel Park, and my twins went in 6th grade. So no, I don't have kids in school now, but I did.
Thank you. Mr. Grisbeck.
So I don't have any kids of my own yet. My partner is currently pursuing her doctorate in nurse anesthesia. She'll be done with that in a few years, and then fingers crossed we'll be able to start a family of our own. Whenever I do have kids of my own, I plan on absolutely sending them to public schools in the Bethel Park School District. I very much am in favor of the promise of just a complete, full education for all students, no matter their ability to pay. I think that, one of the main reasons that I'm running, and why I think that it's so important that younger people do run, is because my future kids all have a stake in their education for probably the next 25 years. I have a very vested interest in making sure that not only does our district improve in the short term, but that we stay competing in the long term, that we continue to provide a quality level of education, and that we don't let that level of education to fall by the wayside.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Yes, I have a daughter that's attending Neil Armstrong Middle School. The reason she is there is because my wife and I, a few years ago, purposely moved into Bethel because of the school system and the reputation it had. I grew up, graduated from Baldwin. It's a neighboring school district. So I was always aware that Bethel had a very strong reputation for their schools. As far as, the need, why, and I agree with, the other candidates, when we pull our resources into the public schools, we're able to offer so much more of a diversity of classes and special interests. We're able to better serve, kids with special needs, kids on, college tracks, which just isn't available in a smaller school or a charter school, or one of those, as far as the breadth of classes we're able to offer. So, the importance of public education, and I agree with Ms. Janicek about, just the need to educate kids. They're going to be voting. They're going to be, deciding who's going to run the country, companies, everything else. So all of us, even if we don't have kids in the district, have a vested interest to make sure it succeeds and everyone does well.
Thank you. The next question will be answered by Ms. Feist first. Ms. Feist, what would be your top priorities in building community relations, and what concrete examples can you give for their success elsewhere?
So I think that we first have to figure out what the best medium is to deliver that information to all families. I think that we assume that everybody's technologically savvy or is at least reading emails or online or on social media, and I think that there are a great many people that are not. So I think that we need to, while I don't want to do unnecessary mailers or anything, I think we need to first figure out what the best way is to reach everyone in the community. And then it's very easy on a computer to divide those people into these are emails, these are mail, and that way you deliver the information, because I don't feel like everything is reaching everyone. And I feel like having town halls is also a great way to bring the community together and have people able to voice their opinions. I am as much in person as possible. I feel like conversations with as many people as we can talk to is the best thing. I'm not a big fan of social media because I think tone and everything else gets lost. So as much as we can get together and have community events and hear from our neighbors and our friends, I think that's the best way to have a successful community.
Thank you. Mr. Grisbeck, you can answer that question next.
I believe the most important thing with communication and community involvement is just meeting people where they are. I think we should have a very broad array of outreach efforts, whether it be something like social media, like Ms. Weiss said, mailers, even getting out in the community and knocking on doors and seeing what our community cares about. I've probably knocked close to 2,000 doors at this point during this campaign cycle. And I know a lot of people, especially those who don't have kids in school anymore, kind of feel disconnected. They don't feel like they are necessarily a part of the Bethel Park School District, and they don't always know what's going on in the school district. So I think we need to do everything we can to make sure that we're reaching out to as many people as possible so we get all stakeholder opinions. I think that what the strategic planning committee did specifically with the kind of their community engagement pieces, I think that's a good path to go down. The number one thing that I'd like to bring back that this current board actually kind of started is to have those community forums and town halls. I know COVID kind of put a wrench in that plan. It's a bit difficult to do, but even if we have them online, just giving people the opportunity to come and speak to the board, because I know during public comment, generally it's board practice. Not always, but usually not to respond to questions. So giving them the opportunity to ask these questions that they really care about and get board answers is very important in my opinion.
Thank you. Ms. Janisic, can you answer that question? Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I've got it. Thank you. Yes, I think community and family engagement for me is a huge, huge, huge piece of why I'm running and what I'm interested in working on in our district. I actually gave a keynote on Monday at Robert Morris University about family and community engagement and making that an authentic relationship, not just checking a box. We offered a program, we checked off our family engagement. And one of the things I talked about was our superintendent's approach to the strategic plan, because it was such a wonderful, wonderful example of true community engagement. He brought in people from all stakeholder groups, not just students who often get left out, right? We brought in students, families, staff, teachers, administration, and members of the community who maybe don't fit into those other categories, and really worked hard on making sure everyone's voice was heard, bringing up what are we good at? Where do we want to go? How can we use our strengths to get us to the new place? And coming together to create policies and things we can do to actually move forward together as one. I often say we all have to get in the boat and we all have to row together.
Thank you. Mr. Grisbeck, you get to answer the next question. And I'm going to ask you, if you want me to repeat the question, I will be happy to do that. Just say so. Otherwise, I'll just ask it once. So
ask Mr. Brown that last question.
Oh, okay. Yes, I got skipped.
I have him checked off, so I'm sorry. Did you answer that or did I miss you?
I did not answer that one.
Oh, I apologize.
Okay. As far as community engagement, all school board decisions should be made transparently, and community input should always be welcomed and considered. And like Buffy said, we already we publish minutes ahead of time. The agenda is published ahead of time. The minutes and videos are online to be viewed on demand. But there's still a large segment of the community that feels like they are out of the loop. This was especially evident during, all the masking and things that came up during COVID, where a lot of these parents, they were upset because a lot of them didn't know the rationale behind the decisions. They felt like, there was secrecy in the meeting. So however we can get the message out, include more people so that everyone feels like they're part of the conversation, would be a great benefit. Whatever form that would take, I would certainly welcome it.
Thank you. I apologize. Question 4 for Mr. Grisbeck. With the teacher's contract expiring in 2022, how will you work with the union leaders to secure a contract and keep schools open?
So before my current position as an engineer at the Naval Nuclear Laboratory, I was actually an operations manager at US Steel Clairton. So I do have some experience working in and managing in a union environment. And one thing that I was able to do there was really have a very collaborative and open atmosphere. What I found was that even though I didn't actually work on the contract specifically, still working in that sort of environment, I think gives you a little bit of perspective. And I found that whenever you are open with people, whenever you are negotiating in good faith and trying to negotiate for both what the teachers want, as well as what the community wants, and making sure that you're just continually taking positive steps towards coming to that agreement, I think that's the avenue that works best. Historically, we've had a lot of contention between the teachers' unions and boards or administration. I think that right now we have a pretty good school board and administration that will work in good faith and will make sure that we're putting the teachers, students, and community needs and wants first, rather than just, kind of nickel and diming people for things that maybe don't make sense in the long term and aren't the best things to advocate for the best student education possible.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, I'd like you to answer that next.
Yes, having gone through a couple contract negotiations at my own school, I'm very aware of the different demands placed on all the different parties. Teachers, administration, school board, and they all feel pressure from the community. That being said, all the teachers I know are in this because they have a passion for what they're doing. They want to make a difference and they want what's best for the kids. A lot of times the issues come up where the demands placed on teachers keep growing and growing. More, it's death by 1,000 administrative, orders. But given the time constraints, teachers want to do the best practices. They want what's best for the kids. We just have to find middle ground so that they have time to do it. There's compensation is always an issue. People look at the top scale, what teachers make, but that's after 20 years of service. They don't realize that the entry level pay is actually below what their degrees would merit in the private sector. So there's a lot of common ground to be found, but all the parties involved want what's best for the kids, and we just have to figure out a way to plot our way through that so that make that happen.
Thank you. Ms. Janasek, would you please answer that?
Sure. I think that by focusing on why we're all here, like Sean said, we are all here because we care about children and because we want children to succeed. And we want the district to succeed, and that helps our community succeed. I think that it's a good point to make that, I'm not trying to negotiate on behalf of teachers. Teachers can negotiate on behalf of themselves. I'm trying to negotiate on behalf of the district as a whole. And I think when we are all focused on that buy-in and that community spirit of remembering why we're here and what we're trying to do, and putting the needs of children first while balancing the fact that teachers don't work on an assembly line. Our school district is not producing widgets. We can't just crank up the machinery and make everybody make the widgets faster. We have real children with real needs, and developing relationships with children so that we can provide the support that they need and so that they are ready to learn in school requires all of us working together. And that's not something that is solely on the shoulders of teachers. It shouldn't be. We need the support, and we need to come together as a community to make sure that we are letting teachers teach and we are all supporting children in the many ways they need.
Thank you. Ms. Feist.
Teacher contract, right? Will you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Sure. With the teacher's contract expiring in 2022, how will you work with the union leaders to secure a contract and keep schools open?
Okay. So, yeah, first of all, I think that being a teacher and knowing the contract verbiage in and out is helpful. I've been a member of my union since I started teaching, and so I'm very aware of the verbiage, and I also know what the bargaining tools are with unions. And like Sean said, we're teachers, so having conversations with other teachers is very easy, and we know how we're viewed by by some of the community, and we also know what our jobs entail. So I think that there's a fair way to do it where teachers are compensated fairly, and the community isn't going on a witch hunt. And I think that being that Sean and I are both in unions, it would be second nature for me to be able to negotiate that. So that's not a concern for me at all.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, you'll get a chance to answer this question first. What is your experience in budget oversight? What size budgets have you been involved in overseeing? You're muted, Mr. Brown. Sorry, you're muted. We'll start the clock over.
Okay, thanks. My dog was barking during the last answer, so I had to mute it. As far as the budget questions goes, my work in the private sector, running projects, dealt with, having to allocate resources, wisely, with hiring practices. So there's a good bit of, just prioritization that needs to occur as far as how to wisely, spend, the limited resources the community has. I've ran my own business. I've ran a business with friends. I've been an independent contractor. So the ledger book has always been, front and center in my mind, during those years. Once I made the jump to education 8 years ago, obviously as a teacher, I'm not setting budgets, but I'm still aware of the resources the district has. When I wanted to start a new electronics class, I had to make sure there would be funding available for all the materials I needed. And just keeping in touch with administration and what page they're on regarding finances, just restocking my classroom every year for consumables. So, I'm aware of it now. I had more experience of it when I worked in the private sector, but that's my answer for that one.
Thank you. Ms. Janasek, can you please answer that question? Would you like me to repeat it?
No, that's okay. I got it. So for me, between basically household budget and also working with various nonprofit groups who generally are working on grants. That's how nonprofits are mostly funded, grants and fundraisers, working with those groups on writing grant proposals, figuring out how much of the grant we can spend on various things, how many other sources we need to tap into, what kinds of funds we need to raise, and then working out over the life of the grant, which is often multi-year, where those funds are going to go and making sure that those funds are covering what we need to do to run the program that we're talking about. But I will also say that from the beginning of my volunteering in our district, I've been digging into the budgets every year, attending every single budget meeting, printing off the budgets, following along, making some requests for additional information, looking at line item expenses in our budget, and asking a lot of questions about where things are, what the codes mean, how we're moving money around. And we have such a good team now in administration who provides so much more detail and information about those topics, and trusting them and working with them to get those things answered is so important. We work together on that.
Thank you. Ms. Weiss?
I think that like in my home, you work within the budget that you have. I don't know if this is a tax question or not. Can you say the question again so I don't say the wrong answer? You don't have to stop the clock because it's going to be short.
No, it says this is the size of budgets. What have you done with budgets? I'll be
Oh,
asking
okay.
a question
Okay.
about taxes later.
Okay, good. All right. Okay. So in my classroom, we have a budget every year. I've always had a budget in the classroom, and I have a budget at home. I was a single mom for a long time too. Add that to my, very unique background. And so I've always been able to work within my means. You have to. So I think that you get creative and you find ways to manage the budget, making sure that in this case, with being a school director, the kids have to come first. So I think that if the budget directly impacts the children, then that's where we start. And then everything else comes second, because, that's why we're here. We're here for kids. So my most important thing would be, how does this impact the kids whenever I'm looking at a budget, and then working within the means.
Thank you. Mr. Grisbeck?
So as I said, I used to be an operations manager at US Steel. While I didn't always work closely with the budget, I still had to, like Ms. Weiss said, work under the budget. I had a certain amount allocated to me, usually in the several $million range. And I'd make sure that all of our staffing needs, our equipment costs, our refurbishments, they all fell under that budget. While an engineer at the Naval Nuclear Lab, while I don't really do much budgeting now, I do a significant amount as it pertains to cost saving projects. I actually just had a submittal this past year that's estimated close to $15 million in savings for the Navy. So I think that that's really something that I can bring to the table. I'm also currently pursuing my master's in engineering with a concentration in engineering management. That will give me kind of more of an academic knowledge as it pertains to things like accounting, finance, all of those that I can bring to the board. Like Ms. Janasek said already, I have been pretty involved in all of the budget meetings, making sure that I'm looking at line item by line item, understanding the overall picture, making sure that I know what everything means and where all of our costs are coming from, so that I can hopefully look at, possible improvements. I think the zero-based budget that we started utilizing in the past year was a fantastic change that really has benefited our district.
Thank you. Ms. Janasek, you get to answer the next question first. Who would you look to for advice on issuing bonds and/or a tax levy for facility needs or any other needs? What data would be the most important for you?
Oh, two things, I guess. So who would I look to and what data would be important? I think I would look to our finance team and the current board members who kind of have already started down that process. We had a meeting recently where that bond project was previewed and some questions were asked. So I would look to those experts. And what data, I think, was the second part?
Yes, what data would be important to you?
The data that would be important to be would be, one, obviously the cost to our district, and where we would long-term, over the entire range of the project, how we are going to repay that debt and the impact that has on the rest of the budget, as well as whether or not that meets our educational needs in the district. Future projections of both revenue and expenses, which again, our finance team in the district is doing such a great job at projecting those things out and explaining exactly under what circumstances they're estimating those numbers in detail. This is if we have cost expenses for inflation. This is an estimated growth. It's detailed, and that is exactly what we need.
Ms. Feist, could you answer that question, please?
Yes, I think I said it kind of before. I think that I would look to see where money was going. First of all, that would be the data I would look at, like where's the money going and where's the money that we have going, and can anything we're spending be cut somewhere else to benefit something else without raising taxes? That would be the first thing. I'm not going to quickly vote yes to raise taxes ever. I'm especially coming out of the pandemic. I think that I've been pretty clear about that along the way. So I do think that, like I said before, if there's a benefit to kids, that's first. So and the data, obviously we could look at, you already know what you're spending on buildings and on personnel, and there's a lot of things you already know. So I think that looking over the records from prior budgets and working with financial team, like Sharon said, is the key. And I'm just glad I don't make that decision by myself. And that's that.
Mr. Grisbeck, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, so like Ms. Feist and Ms. Janasek already said, this would definitely be a decision that I would focus or rely heavily on our finance director, Mr. McCausland, and the rest of our budgeting team, because they really are the ones that kind of have the expertise in this situation. Definitely want to make sure that I am looking at where this money is exactly going to and making sure that it's a fiscally responsible spending of our tax dollars. I know that there are a lot of people in our community that are on fixed incomes, and bonds and levies can be pretty prohibitive for them. It can make a substantial difference on their day-to-day life. So we need to make sure that, like Ms. Feist said, these dollars are absolutely going to the betterment and improvement of the education of our students. I know a lot of people in Bethel Park kind of have a sour taste in their mouth over, capital projects and things like this because of the history with our high school. Kind of no matter how people felt about the old campus style versus the new high school that was built, there are certain things like our air conditioning that people point to kind of lose faith in this process. So we need to make sure that we're really getting community involvement in this. We need to talk to our stakeholders and our community members so they understand why we're spending this money, that we're not just throwing around their hard-earned tax dollars, that there is real justification and reasoning for this decision.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, could you answer that question?
Yes. One of the most important jobs of the school board is to be careful stewards of the community's resources. Deferring decisions to, we do have a good, financial team working for the borough right now, working for the school district, and, looking at, as far as the data to look at, just considering, they've done studies on looking at demographics coming up, what makes sense as far as consolidating elementary schools, looking at closing out other schools. So it should all be, data-driven decisions that make financial sense. And as far as future expenditures, I think too often the short-term goals are looked at as opposed to seeing how much, it's going to play out in the future as far as cost savings go. And allocating money, smartly for, upcoming expenses. So just, taking a hard look at, again, these are, the money in this community comes from the families. So you just have to, and like Ms. Buffy said, or as Buffy said, just raising taxes, isn't always the answer. Smartly spending it and making wise choices is usually, the first step.
Thank you. Ms. Feist, you get to answer the next question first. What
Good, you won't have to repeat it.
Pardon me?
I said, good, at least you won't have to repeat it for me.
What do you consider to be the major challenges facing your school district? And what is your plan to address these challenges?
Oh, I think that the country is the biggest the biggest issue facing our school district. I'll be very honest. I'm a teacher in a school. I am seeing exactly what's happening, and what's happening is kids are bringing problems from home to school. Conversations that adults are having in front of kids that kids have no business being privy to, that kids don't understand, and they're bringing it to school. So there's a gigantic divide right now in schools. So first of all, I think that and I mean there's always going to be there's so many things we have to address in schools, but curriculum and instruction always has to be at the forefront for sure. But mental health right now is huge. Kids are struggling because they're, like I said, they're privy to conversations at home that they shouldn't be. So I think that somehow all of us in schools, out of schools, everywhere have to find some kind of unity because we're imploding. So I think that's the biggest challenge right now for kids. Learning is first, but whenever those little brains are in 17 different places, they can't even focus long enough to learn. So there's really, I think that mental health is a big issue right now.
Thank you. Mr. Grisbeck, would you answer that question next?
Yeah, I think Ms. Weiss kind of hit the nail on the head there. As everyone in our community knows, there really has been a lot of tension within the community in the past year, 2 years. A lot of people felt, I think, justifiably really frustrated during COVID. It was a really tough situation for everyone to handle and still remains so. I mean, we had board meetings where after passing a mask mandate, a member of our community called the board members Nazis for trying to make sure that they kept students safe. I think it's really hard to operate whenever we have that amount of animus within the community. So I think we need to make sure that we're listening to our community and that we're having these conversations as respectfully and objectively as possible. Another big thing is, again, like Ms. Weiss said, mental health resources. Right now, our mental health resources are not quite sufficient within our district. I think we need to increase the amount of social workers that we have within the school district, especially at the elementary level, making sure that we have a social worker at every school. So all of these issues that students have dealt with even before the pandemic, but especially during the pandemic and after the pandemic, are appropriately addressed. We've also had a history of kind of stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. And we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can in our power to give our students the best education possible, and that we're not just trying to cut corners for minor little cost benefits.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, can you address that question?
Sure. Could you repeat the question for me?
Sure. What do you consider to be the major challenges facing your school district, and what is your plan to address these challenges?
Sure. Like the other one said, being in my classroom for 7 years, I, firsthand experience to see the problems kids are bringing in with them. Since COVID hit, the two main issues I see right now are number one, students have fallen behind, especially with the remote learning. In my district, it was not required to be synchronous. So I saw a big drop in participation, and a lot of kids have come back this year without the skills that they should have. Getting them identified early and quickly and getting them caught up is really of utmost importance right now. The second one, and to say, to go along with what Dan and Buffy said, kids cannot learn when they are suffering from crippling anxiety and depression. I see a lot of this in my classroom now. I have, I'm privy to staffing meetings. I have kids who are in and out of mental health facilities. It's as bad as I've ever seen it in the 7 years I've been there. Kids cannot learn when they're in that state. So addressing those needs with professional help is the best way to get them, back on track and in the classroom.
Thank you. Ms. Janicek.
So I think there's three major factors. And one, I know it's echoing, but the mental health resources and making sure under that umbrella, we're remembering that all children, no matter who they are, what they look like, where they're from, or what they believe, need to be safe and welcome in schools. And part of that is that relationship building. And, educators know, right, that a child is not ready to learn until their basic needs are met. And a need for acceptance, community, and feeling safe. And if we're not investing in those supports and those resources and giving our teachers and staff time to build those relationships, it doesn't matter what we do with the curriculum and instruction. But we also need to make sure that we are really looking at our curriculum and instruction from K to 12 as it progresses all along the way, and that we're really making sure those transitions from grade to grade are supported by what was learned in the previous grade, and really taking a good look at what opportunities we have to provide additional support and or additional challenge to make sure that we're meeting kids where they are and providing them what they need right now to be successful and to move forward. And I don't have time to get to facilities, but maybe in the next question.
That question can be answered first by Mr. Grisbeck. There's been a lot of discussion recently about traditional values, and the phrase has appeared on flyers that went out to the community. What does traditional values mean to you?
That's an interesting question. So before this election, I don't think I'd really given the phrase much thought. I don't know if I, consider myself to have traditional values or not. However, earlier this year, I was informed about a Facebook group called Bethel Park Traditional Education. And our 3 opponents are all members of that group. And to join the group, you have to agree that you believe masks do more harm than good, that we should return to mostly pen and paper and scrap the computers, and that Bethel Park should not have any sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion program. Also, that students shouldn't be taught anything about sexual orientation. If those are the, types of traditional values that our opponents are advocating for in their mailers and literature, then I definitely don't think I'm in favor of traditional values. I think that we need all students to feel welcome whenever they come to school. I think that we need to teach students 21st century skills, and that involves really knowing how to use computers because a lot of jobs require them nowadays. So I guess that's where I stand on traditional values.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, can you answer that question?
Sure. The phrase traditional values seems to mean different things depending on which group is using it, and even within the same group, which topic, whether it agrees with something they already believe in or not. Kind of a loaded phrase, and it seems like recently it has been used as sort of a cover to mask bigoted views, just non-inclusive views, and it's a nice sounding word, but a lot of times it seems like it's applied with not the best intentions. To me, it's simple. Do what's best for the kids in the schools. Everyone should feel welcomed, included, part of the process. And above all, scientific studies and reasoning should win out over preconceived notions. There's just too much right now of people getting information in bubbles and not actually understanding science behind decisions. So it's kind of a mess right now. This is a weird election cycle to run where these things have become so front and center, but here's my time on that. So thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Janasik?
I think traditional values for me don't match what our opponents think are traditional values. To me, traditional values are viewing everyone as the full, valuable human being that they are, and granting all people access to what they need, access to information, access to grow and learn and thrive. All people need and deserve acceptance. They deserve being welcomed. They deserve being valued for who they are. And to me, those are traditional values, that we view ourselves as members of a larger community. And in this time, in 2021, we are members of a global community. And our students are no longer going to graduate from our school and stay in Bethel Park forever. They need to be able to understand and work with people from around the world, from different cultures, people who look different than they do, who have different lives and different levels of abilities. And being able to do that with acceptance and openness and respect, that is a traditional value.
Thank you. Ms. Feist, could you address that question?
Sure. I think that all this stuff is hilarious, because this is what I was talking about before when I said that our community is imploding, our country is imploding. A term like traditional value, to me, that means that you respect other people and you have empathy and you try to be a good person. And I don't understand who took the word traditional and value and made it into this ridiculous, oh my gosh, I don't even know, coin this term that now means that, you know, we don't want to accept other people, or we want to go back to 1950. It is 2021. We have now lived through a pandemic. We've lived through, like, you know, a million other things that did not exist in 1950. So I feel like going back to that, because I feel like that's kind of what I'm hearing from this new term, traditional values. Like, it's not doing anything current. Well, we are current, and kids are not coming from, like, you know, Beaver Cleaver households anymore. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and I feel like, so we just have to address things the way they are and move forward. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
I don't know if I
Mr.
answered
Brown, thank you. Mr. Brown gets to answer this question first. What recent school board decisions have you disagreed with and why?
I'd say most recently in August, before, right before school started, the board met, and despite all the scientific reasoning behind it, initially voted to make masks optional. It went against what the evidence told me was the best way to keep the most kids in school in the classroom for the most amount of time. It seemed like there was pressure to cave to a very vocal yet minority block of community members to appease them. We've all seen the craziness in the news regarding, the protests at school board meetings. So I didn't agree with the initial decision to make masks optional. I saw it in my classroom last year. The kids who, we had rolling closures last year, kids would be out with quarantining. The policy they had initially in place was pretty much going to guarantee that was going to continue. They reevaluated, switched directions, and both Bethel and the district I work in, we have managed to go the year so far without any mass closures and only small amounts of quarantining for students. So, it was initially a decision I did not get behind, but I was very happy that they changed the course.
Thank you. Ms. Janasik?
The most recent decision, I have to agree with Sean. The most recent decision I disagreed with was when they altered the health and safety plan in an attempt to appease some people who came to the meeting and were uncivil and disruptive. And So I appreciate that they took a recess, which was necessary to get things calmed down. But they added language into the health and safety plan to try to make it so it was clear that it would be a government order if there were going to be masks in school. And I think that it was clear even at that point that the only way we were going to get the most kids, the most in-person instruction as often as possible was if everyone was masked. That was already clear from the guidelines. So that would be the most recent decision I disagreed with. But I will note that it did eventually work out, that they did vote for masks, and immediately after there was a statewide mandate from the health department.
Thank you. Mr. Grisbeck.
Yep, same thing for me. I guess I have a few different frustrations with this decision. First and foremost, like Ms. Janicek said, the fact that they kind of succumbed to some rather unruly people in order to change the verbiage of their health and safety plan. I disagreed with the initial decision to make masking optional, especially because they stated that they were doing things consistent with the CDC guidelines, which the CDC guidelines was at that point to have universal masking. So I don't think that was true to begin with. But then to say that you were only going to mandate masks in the event of a state or national mandate, I think was a bad decision. And we kind of saw that whenever they eventually did mandate masks. And they did that on the night before school started. So I think decisions like that, even though the initial decision kind of went against all, meta-analyses and systematic reviews, public health opinion, but to go back on your promise to the community that you would only mandate masks in the event of a state or national, order is really inconsistent, and it erodes public confidence. For people to have to stay up till 11 o'clock on the night before the first day of school because you didn't make the right decision in the first place, and then to go back on your word to the community, I think it was just all around kind of a debacle.
Thank you. We're on to question 10.
Please ask Ms. Feist the question about the school.
Oh,
board. Yes.
I am sorry. I've got
Okay.
2 columns wrong here. I wondered what was wrong. Okay, Ms. Feist, I apologize again. Thank you.
Oh, that's okay.
Judy. Thank you, Judy, for keeping track of me.
I'm probably going to throw everyone when I say this because I've been more, what's the word? Maybe I've been more non-complacent, maybe about masking. I don't know if that's the right word, but anyway, my point, I agree with Sharon about the health and safety plan being adapted that night. I think that was a bad decision because all they did was to say, if you scream and yell enough, we're going to change the rule for you. And and this is not about the masking rule. I'm in a school and I see what we have a mask mandate and kids wear them or they don't, even though there's a mandate. So some kids don't put them on their faces and we're no longer yelling at those kids to wear them. So this is not about masking for me. This is about saying the person that yells the loudest gets the rule changed for them. And I think that we're turning our community into a big bunch of rule breakers. And the last thing, here's what's going to happen then. You're going to have kids that then come into school and say, well, I'm smoking here because I'm allowed to smoke at home. And then people are going to say, well, wait, there's no smoking in school, but wait, because we keep changing rules for people that, a group like this who aren't happy with them. So pretty soon there aren't going to be any rules. So I think it was a really bad example in general. So I agree with Sharon in that I did not agree with changing the health and safety plan that night.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, you get to answer this next question first. With a huge focus on STEM programs, how will you ensure children who don't have interest or aptitude for the program will have equal opportunities for subjects that would be appropriate to them?
It's a good question. I think, incorporating STEM principles into other courses is the way to do that. Not everyone's going to sign up for my electronics class, but they can use the same principles, projects, in any of the other classes. What was the second part of that question?
Who don't have the interest or aptitude would have equal opportunities for subjects that would be appropriate for them.
Yeah.
For children who have lesser interest.
Yeah, one way I do that with my STEM classes is just to make really interesting and engaging projects. For instance, I have my electronics class, we have projects on the shelf, and I have kids who come in for a co-taught math class who are not on maybe that track to take those classes. They see these projects, they ask questions, it piques their interest, and I've had kids end up signing up for my classes that way. So, interesting and cool, engaging projects will sell themselves. You're right about the problem is getting more kids who might not be interested in that exposed to it so that they can see it. But it works for me in my setting, and trying to replicate that would probably be successful elsewhere.
Ms. Feist, can you answer that question, please?
Yes, can you repeat it?
Yeah, with a huge focus on STEAM programs, how would you ensure children who don't have interest or aptitude for the program would have equal opportunities for subjects that would be appropriate for them?
Okay, I'm a life skills teacher, so I teach kids with special needs, and there is not one single subject in school that cannot be adapted and modified to reach every learner, and that's that. We have a PACE lab where I work, which is all hands-on, and there are levels. And prior to having the PACE lab, I created one on a much lesser budget with shoe boxes in my classroom, and I had all these jobs that were hands-on, including even like hooking up a battery to wiring and stuff like that. So there were projects that you could do in every single class. You just modify and adapt. I mean, there's no reason that every single kid can't experience every class or a piece of it to find their niche. So that's a pretty easy thing for me. I don't know if I need to elaborate anymore, but that's it. That's all there is to it.
Thank you. Ms. Janasik?
Sure. I think that this is a combination answer because it's partly about STEM and STEAM, but we also have to talk about enrichment, differentiation, and universal design for learning. So properly integrating STEM and STEAM in all grade levels, in all classes, involves a lot of project-based learning. And using components of STEM lessons and kits and ideas in projects where you are crossing a math and science course with an English objective and having those things working together, or English and social studies. There are so many ways that we can interweave courses, topics, focuses to make education and what we're asking students to do and giving them the opportunity to do with a wide variety of choices. So if you're not that interested in STEM, but it's a component of the project you're doing, maybe it's a group project and you're the writer and that's what you focus on. Maybe you use a little bit of STEM and most of your project are these great slides showing your charts and graphs that you made. And using UDL, Universal Design for Learning, that way gives every student the opportunity to choose what works for them to show what they know and letting them make that choice themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Grisbeck.
I think integrating all different concepts, like everyone else has already said, is a great way to kind of get those students who maybe don't have as much interest in STEAM programs a little bit more involved in the process, integrating science into maybe English class so they can learn scientific concepts while still focusing on English. Again, a good way to kind of get them a little bit more interested in the topic. But to kind of more address the question, I think it's really important that we continue to provide all these offerings. Bethel Park is known for their fantastic music program. That's probably the #1 favorite thing for a lot of students in school. And even if those students maybe don't go on to a career in music and they choose to go down a different path, just having that music class once a day or a few times a week can really improve their interest in school in general. Because for a lot of students, it's really difficult to get through all of their math and science classes every day. They get frustrated, they have difficulty learning, but it might be that one math class or pardon me, one music class or one art class or something like that, that really kind of picks them up, helps them be more engaged in school, want to come to school more, and just improves their overall focus in school. So I think making sure that we have a wide breadth in our curriculum, like we do, especially at the high school level, we have a lot of elective offerings that I did not have whenever I went to high school. So I think continuing those and even expanding those more really makes sure that students stay engaged during school, even if they don't like STEAM.
Thank you. I see that we've been on for a little more than an hour, so I'm going to make this our last question, and we'll do it in reverse order from the beginning. So Mr. Grisbeck will go first.
Excuse me, I've lost the timer and I'm going to try to get it back.
Okay.
Because we went over time, so I'm going to try to get it back, but
Okay. Well, I can put a timer on my own.
okay.
Okay. So what are your visions for this school district 5 to 10 years from now? And what systemic changes will you work towards to achieve that vision? Mr. Grisbeck first.
Okay. So I think long-term, what I'd love to see Bethel Park as is really a leader in STEAM. I was on the curriculum planning committee for the strategic planning committee, and that was one of the kind of final goals that we came out with. I think that adding the STEAM director like we did to our district is a great way to kind of make that vision a reality. Some of the kind of more short-term and specific items to achieve that long-term goal is to increase collaboration, whether it be for in-service or Act 80 days for teachers, to make sure that we're integrating STEAM into different topics like we've already discussed, for example, including a scientific article in English class and writing about that, making sure that we have things like maker spaces or STEAM rooms so that students are able to collaborate with their fellow students, do projects, really get engaged, and give them a really good 21st century learning. I think that that will kind of almost put Bethel Park on the map as a top school in the area.
Okay, Ms. Feiss, would you go first?
Yeah, I think
second?
definitely moving up the ranking of Bethel Park, because I think we're 18th right now in the niche rating, and that's unacceptable. We should be much higher than that. So that would be first and foremost, is to improve our rating, and then to get back to being a community, and to have, you know, kids that are higher or raising the graduation rate and having successful community and successful students leaving. And that's that.
Okay, Ms. Janasek, what are your visions for the school district 5 to 10 years from now?
My visions are that, one, we have come together as a community, and that we are all truly, all the stakeholders, including people who don't have kids in school, are all working together, are all taking pride in our community, taking pride in our students, that our students are giving back to our community, and that we are developing honest, true, real relationships between all of those groups, and particularly with our students, that they feel supported, that they feel safe, that they feel accepted and valued, that we have addressed the culture in our buildings, that we are all working together. We aren't competing, we're cooperating, that we are all taking care of one another, that we together as school communities have decided who we want to be and how we want to be and what's not going to be acceptable, that we value all people, all students, and that we see everyone for who they are and what they bring to our community and to our world.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, I think long-term it is important to establish just a sense, a culture of acceptance and community, and that we're all in this together instead of comparing you know, having a team mentality with the way politics seems to be going right now. You know, improving test scores is really important. However, it's not just test scores. The end goal is equipping our kids so that they're successful, you know, when they enter a competitive global, you know, workforce. There are good jobs out there, but employers want skilled, experienced employees. You know, creating programs in school, incorporating STEM into, you know, other subjects. You know, this stuff is it's gonna be more important the further we get. You know, You know, one idea that I would like to pursue long term, you know, in that kind of time frame, is to, you know, establish partnerships with local businesses so that our students can have a paid internship to, you know, test out these jobs, you know, see what's involved. You know, that would have so many benefits. It's commonplace in engineering programs. It benefits the students and employers, and it helps the students bridge that disconnect they sometimes feel when they're wondering why they're learning something in school, you know, as opposed to being able to put it into practice in the real world. It, you know, helps that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Now we can move to final statements where you can tell us why you should be elected to this office. And we'll start with Ms. Feiss.
I ran for school board because I work in a school and there are no educators on the board. And I thought that was a giant disservice, because how come a bunch of people that don't actually work in schools and aren't educators are making decisions? So I ran here in Bethel Park because I went to Bethel, my kids went to Bethel, minus those 2 years, you know, and I felt like I wanted to give back to the community that has given me so much. And this community that we have right now is not an example of what it used to be. And I would like to get it back to where it was a neighborhood where you cared about each other, and there was a unity and there was a pride that went along with being from Bethel. So those are the reasons that I ran, and those are the reasons I think I'd be a good director.
Thank you. Ms. Janasek?
Thank you. I ran for school board because I want to be able to bring inside our district, where we're making decisions, the broad range view that I've gotten over the past 6 years from talking to hundreds and hundreds of families and students and teachers and staff and board members and administrators, having all of these individual conversations and putting together the pieces from everyone's experiences and being able to remember and bring up in the course of decision making. We have to remember all students, not just the ones in the middle of the bell curve, all students, and make decisions that respect and address the needs of students everywhere in our district, no matter where they are, in terms of academic success or demographic popularity, kids who are already happy and kids who are really struggling, and being able to bring that personal perspective of knowing what families need, what students need, and what the challenges are to bridge those gaps and bring us together.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, I'm running for school board director because I want to make a positive change in the community here. You know, looking back, the reason I've gotten to the place where I am in life is because I've had a lot of help from the people that came before me. They've made sacrifices, they made the right decisions. You know, people paid school taxes long before I was there to educate the teachers who educated me. I think I have a sense of I need, you know, now at a point in my life where I've had, you know, enough experience, enough job experience, both teaching and in the private sector, where I have an area of expertise where I feel like I can pay that debt forward. So, you know, I want to bring forth positive change. I want to bring our rankings up. I want to prepare our kids for the future. You know, there's nothing really more important than that. I didn't become a teacher for the pay. I actually took a pay cut when I changed careers in my mid-30s, but I I believe in it. I think it's important, and we're only going to be as good in the future as the kids that we're educating now are. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Grisbeck?
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters for holding this forum and allowing the community to learn more about the candidates. If elected to school board, I look forward to working with all stakeholders to strengthen our district and our community. I will work hard to ensure that issues and concerns are brought to the table, to amplify the voices of our most vulnerable and marginalized students, and to continue down the path that our new school board started in 2019 to move our district forward in a positive direction where we strive for excellence rather than simply accepting a basic level of education. It is imperative that each student feels welcome, safe, and included in our schools. It's our responsibility as a community to provide the tools and opportunities needed to all students so they may achieve their personal best. Bethel Park needs school board directors that make decisions based on the most current studies and data. Bethel Park needs school board directors that have tangible ideas on how to improve our school district, rather than ones who just throw around buzzwords. Perhaps most importantly, Bethel Park needs school board directors who are accountable to the community. Ones who aren't afraid to answer tough questions and let people know where they stand on the issues that impact our district. So I ask you to vote for the candidates who meet these criteria. I ask you to vote for the only candidates who felt that it was important that they come today and be held accountable to the public. I ask you to use your 4 votes to elect Sean Brown, Buffy Feist, Sharon Janicek, and myself, Dan Grisbeck, to the Bethel Park School Board. Together, we can transform Bethel Park into the district our students deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to say that on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Greater Pittsburgh, I'd like to thank our candidates for participating in this forum and thank the viewers for their interest in this important race. Voters can obtain much more election information on our website. Go to lwvpgh.org. That's lwvpgh.org. You'll also find judicial candidate information about candidates for the statewide appellate courts and our county court of common pleas. For information on every candidate on your ballot, go to the League of Women Voters online voters guide and enter your home address. Your home address will be completely private. We will not use it for any other resource, means. Go to vote411.org. That's vote411.org. The deadline for applying for a mail-in or absentee ballot is October 26th. Vote either by mail or in person on Election Day, Tuesday, November 2nd, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. This recording is the property of the League of Women Voters of Greater Pittsburgh and can be found in its entirety on the League's Facebook and YouTube pages. The public may share these recordings. Thank you for your interest in candidates running for the important office of Bethel Park School Board. Good night.